Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Tonight I wanted to talk to you about a couple of updates, primarily the threats and escalation between Israel and Iran, with Israel saying we need to carry out a very quick attack very soon against Iran, whereas Iran is saying Israel will be wiped off the map very soon. Now, in recent days, there have been more and more statements coming from Israel when it comes to Iran. The head of the Mossad, he advised Benjamin Netanyahu that we should be carrying out an attack on Iran. However, others view it differently. The IDF is saying, no, we shouldn't attack Iran now. We have time. Benjamin Netanyahu is more inclined to follow the advice of the IDF because the IDF, from their perspective, they're in charge of both defense and attack, and they don't have defense capabilities when it comes to Iran, and that has been very evident when the attack came in True Promise 2, even in True Promise 1, but True Promise 2, when Iran landed approximately 200 hypersonic and supersonic ballistic missiles, most of which landing on strategic military bases inside of Israel. Now Yoav Gallant is joining the voices who are saying we should be attacking Iran. He's saying we will be forced to act soon against Iran, and it's going to have to be on a short time scale. Israel is feeling like they are in a momentum now, that Israel is the primary problem, and that we need to carry out this attack very soon. The threats coming from Israel are, well, somewhat exaggerated in many cases, because their attack on Iran, the recent attack that they carried out, it hasn't been significant. I mean, the Iranian air defense systems proved to be very effective. Israel did not dare come close to Iran itself. They carried out the attack from their fighter jets in Iraqi airspace that is usually controlled by the United States in Iraq. And the Iranian air defense systems took down the majority of the projectiles that came from Israel. Some are saying that this is due to Iran not responding yet. And usually when Iran does not respond, Israel gets more appetite to attack Iran again. However, Iran is still saying that they will be carrying out another response against Israel on what is labeled True Promise 3 in the right time. But now there are even more statements coming from Iran when it comes to Israel. The first one was from Brigadier General Fadavi from the IRGC. He's saying in the next few years there will be no entity called Israel. Israel will cease to exist, according to him. He's saying over 92% of the world's countries witnessed protests against the Zionists, and he's saying that so far more than 20,000 children have been martyred in Gaza. Now, Iran is not only talking, they're also preparing as well. They're having a drill, a massive drill, that will be conducted at a very, very large scale with both defensive and attack maneuvers in the coming days. Now, this is one of the regular drills that they're carrying out, with an emphasis this time on Israel, because the biggest escalation that Iran has now is between Israel. They know that the United States is behind this. However, the attacks that have been carried out on Iran came from Israel, and Iran did attack Israel directly twice this year. So they're very serious. However, it does appear that Iran is still using its lack of response as somewhat of a leverage when it comes to the ceasefire, because there are more talks about developments when it comes to the ceasefire. More reports coming today that there are still certain points within the ceasefire negotiations that both the Israeli and Palestinian sides haven't agreed upon, primarily to do with the list of names. Hamas is keen on not releasing the names of anyone who's going to be released from their side to Israel unless it's one day before the release. And they're using that as a power power card in their hands, Hamas. They've done that before. Israel accepted it before, but Israel's trying to do something else this time by continuing its attacks in Gaza and having more pressure against the innocent civilians, expanding the genocide, expanding the attacks on the hospitals. Last night, they had an appetite to start attacking more hospitals in a more aggressive manner. They attacked the 3 primary hospitals in North Gaza, Al-Auda Hospital, Kamal Udwan Hospital, and the Indonesian Hospital. The Indonesian hospital, they were forced to evacuate all of their staff, and the patients, all of them were evacuated because of the Zionist attacks. Kamal Udwan, 20 of the staff and patients were wounded. Israel is besieging this hospital, and we've been talking about it for a very long time now. And Al-Auda Hospital, Israel targeted the 3rd floor in an attempt to completely make it dysfunctional, make the hospital dysfunctional. When I say make it dysfunctional, I mean they're almost already dysfunctional. These hospitals, they hardly have anything. But Israel is continuing this alongside their massacres all across of Gaza, with dozens killed in the past 24 hours. And they're doing that as part, well, not only of their campaign of genocide and ethnic cleansing, because that's their main intent really, but they also add that as a response to the attacks coming from the Palestinian resistance, and to also apply pressure on the Palestinian negotiating side to tell them, look what we can do to your people in Gaza if you don't reach a deal, so agree to a deal. Ignoring the fact that, well, Hamas showed you before several times that these things don't faze them. Hamas continued with their same position for the past year, and they've done that based on the last experience they had with Israel in the temporary ceasefire. Because remember, in the temporary ceasefire that happened approximately 2 months after the war began, there was a clause to extend the ceasefire 3 days at a time in return for a number of Israelis released from Gaza and a number of Palestinians released from Israel. And it was the then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant who signed the papers to restart the war, and he did. Therefore, Hamas did not want to enter another risky temporary ceasefire where they will give away some of the Israeli prisoners of war, only for Israel to continue its war on Gaza. Saying that, and again, the talks in general indicate that there has been progress. Even from Hamas perspective, they had a statement today in which they stated that it's Israel still delaying. They want us to release certain names. Clearly, some obstacles have been managed so far, including the withdrawal from certain areas in Gaza in the initial phase, people going back to the north. The niggly points are the names of the people who will be released by Hamas, and Israel confirming in the 3rd phase that they will completely end the war, and everything has to be agreed upon from now, which means Hamas are looking for a complete ending of the war, whereas Israel doesn't want that. They want something or some sort of a mechanism that will enable them to do what they're doing in Lebanon. But the Palestinian resistance is aware to the Israeli tricks, and they don't want that repeated in Gaza, which leads me to Lebanon. There has been a very important and significant development in Lebanon, with reports in Israel confirming that the Israeli army, they destroyed weapon shipments in the Bekaa Valley that were transferred from Syria in recent days. And the Israeli media said in recent days, according to foreign media, without stating, or foreign sources, without stating who these sources are. But what does that indicate? Well, that's a proof coming from Israel that there are still weapons being channeled from Syria to Lebanon. How can that happen when, well, the new Syrian interim government is the same, consists of the same powers who used to fight Hezbollah Hezbollah's position and the Iranian position in Syria was criticized heavily previously. They had their own excuses and narrative for their participation. However, not many people bought that inside of Syria, and including in the Arab world as well, and generally. But now the tone of the interim government in Syria is different. They've even had meetings with Hezbollah and communication. The tone from Hezbollah started to change with the new interim government. So does that mean the new interim government that is controlling the majority of the borders between Syria and Lebanon allowed any weapons shipments to Hezbollah? Perhaps, but not necessarily. Why? Because there might be some routes from Syria to Hezbollah that are not known to everyone. They might have some tunnels inside of Syria. They might have certain areas where, you know, they're away from the authorities' eyes. They could have even had certain routes from Syria to Lebanon that were not really known to the previous government inside of Syria, because the previous government inside of Syria under Bashar al-Assad, well, there were many attacks on Iranian shipments and Iranian planes landing and Iranian stuff inside of Syria. So therefore, from an Iranian Hezbollah perspective, they could have easily had secret routes using their presence inside of Syria to channel weapons to Hezbollah without the knowledge of the previous government, and that could be something that's still being carried out now. And the clearest indication that this shipment is coming from Syria, based on the reports, is the fact that the Beqa Valley is, well, this is where the Hezbollah started. And this is the main area in which Hezbollah gets weapons from Syria. And historically, they've had their training beginning there. They established their military power in that area, and it always has been significant. So this is something very important. And again, it could be something that we don't know in terms of a deal, or it could be something that has been kept secret for a very long time. However, Israel found out when the shipment arrived to Lebanon and then decided to attack it, because Israel is reporting that they're holding many weapons of Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon, using their side agreement that they had with the United States simultaneously with the other guarantors and mediators who participated in ceasefire talks in Lebanon. So although Israel is withdrawing from certain areas, they are still conducting attacks, and they are conducting attacks deep into Lebanese territories. However, clearly, judging by the lack of response from Hezbollah, that Hezbollah are not interested in continuing a full-scale engagement in a confrontation with Israel. However, there is no guarantee that this situation will continue. Hezbollah did target Israel once, just over a week ago, to somewhat send them a message that we are still able to respond, we have our power, and don't continue to attack too much. However, that did not deter Israel clearly, and this attack in the Beqa Valley against this shipment that, according to these reports, came from Syria, is a clear indication that Israel is still attacking heavily inside of Lebanon, although not to the level that they've had before, when you had hundreds of people being martyred every single day in Lebanon. Which leads me to the next point that I wanted to talk to you about. Now, I've been mentioning the tensions between Syria and between Turkey and Israel, especially due to the increased power of Turkey in Syria. They have been supporting the Syrian revolution for a very long time. They support the armed opposition. They had a lot of Syrian refugees. Many of them are coming back to Syria now after the collapse of al-Assad. And they're clearly having lots of plans, strategic plans, financial plans, and economic and military plans inside of Syria, side by side with the interim government of Syria. That puts them at odds with Israel, and Israel is increasingly warning more and more from a potential clash between them and Turkey. So there was this article here in one of the Israeli newspapers, Ma'arif, that said Turkey and Israel are on the verge of a head-on collision, saying after the fall of the Assad regime, Turkey plans to expand the influence in Syria through massive transportation projects. The move could lead to a clash with Israeli interests in the region and the formation of two competing coalitions. Well, the two competing coalitions are already there when it comes to Syria, but the coalitions that Israel is talking about are the energy coalitions, primarily between Israel and Greece. On the other hand, Turkey, Israel, Greece, and a couple of other countries, Cyprus, and on the other hand, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Libya. That's from an economic perspective, a coalition that goes against the Israeli coalition. Although Israel even had understandings with Lebanon regarding the Karish gas field in off the Lebanese shores. Both Israel and Lebanon disputed the presence and who kind of has the authority over it, who has the rights over it, and they reached an agreement. But now, with Turkey becoming more powerful, Israel is viewing this as a bigger threat, at least from an economic perspective, that they would have Turkey with Syria and with Lebanon, Libya as well, competing against them in the Mediterranean. And from a Turkish perspective, they already have historical feuds with Greece, who's an ally of Israel now in the region. Now, that also includes the infrastructure and the airspace and the ports inside of Syria. After the fall of Assad, we've seen Iranian withdrawal, we've seen Russian withdrawal. There have been reports that Russia is going to evacuate its ports in Hmeimim and Tartus as well. Who's going to fill up that vacuum? Most likely Turkey. So Turkey will have access to the Mediterranean from Syria too, and they are rebuilding their Hijaz railway, the railway that used to reach Palestine at one point. There's a rail station in Haifa that used to be from the olden times, well, over 100 years ago, over a century ago. And now they're going to renew it between Turkey and Damascus. All of these things concern Israel, especially if things go to a strategic level, a much tighter coordination that could potentially lead to a defense pact between Syria and Turkey. This is something that would ring alarm bells inside of Israel, because they have been used to what they call freedom of action. Now, Israel is currently using the vacuum inside of Syria to expand on the land. It's not as if they're waiting for anyone. However, once there is an established state inside of Syria, and we're not there when it comes to Syria. There's still a lot of work for the interim government to do when it comes to the northeastern part, and there have been certain protests against them that had sectarian tones in the Latakia areas as well. That would take more time to stabilize the country and have these ties. But Turkey is not waiting. Turkey from day one have been getting arms into Syria, primarily against the SDF threat. Now, Erdogan is telling the SDF, bury your weapons or be buried with them in Syria. This is another warning, another escalation coming from Turkey, that they wouldn't tolerate it. And also there were reports that the SDF are showing more signs of willingness to hand in their weapons, and that's become part of the Syrian state, so long as there are certain guarantees. Now, I think the question stopped becoming about guarantees, but rather the US pressure, because SDF is primarily controlled and supported by the United States. And the United States will try and exhaust all of the capabilities of SDF before they give in and have more concessions towards Turkey in Syria. This is something that the United States has been doing for a very long time, using proxies across the world to have its interests. But with Syria, the scale is going to the favor of Turkey now. But Israel is worried about that. And there are more and more reports from the Israeli media and even politicians about the threat coming from Turkey. They all constantly have clashes and exchanges, but now things are escalating more and more between the two countries. And these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about in this video, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace.